Hey, so back with the OMPHobby M2 that had a catastrophic crash because the tail motor burned itself out following a small crash. And in the previous video, I showed a bit of noise from the motor, like bearings and stuff. Now I've taken the bottom off the motor and I've looked at it under the microscope, and there is some very minor scoring on the magnets. In fact, you can just see it there, so I don't need a microscope. Now, it's not consistent across the magnets, therefore it's not the iron cores or ferrite cores or whatever they are. Iron cores, aren't they? It's not one of these sitting proud, otherwise it would have scored a ring all the way around, wouldn't it? So it's just not quite running true. Now obviously I did have a bent main shaft after the big crash, and yes, that was that was tight to get out because it was bent, obviously. And the new shaft is also quite tight to get in. And what I found is that the only way to get a perfect fit. So watch this. Watch how this drops in nicely. That's a perfect fit, that, because it's just dropped through the bearing at the top and the bearing in the bottom of the motor. Now it's possible that this, I forget what they call the part, but this concentric spacer, I think they may have called it, because the idea is that it squares everything up. It's also nice because the main shaft runs through it and you can run your wires next to it without them burning up against the main shaft. It's possible that that's slightly bent now, maybe. Or, maybe this is just acceptable tolerances anyway, and that's life. But basically, that I've got the screws loose on the motor. The only way I can get that perfect fit that I've now got there, I mean, that is absolutely perfect. The only way I can do that is to have the rear, where the single screw is, dropped very slightly. We are talking very, very slightly. Don't know if you can see there. I don't have my normal tripod, it's in the garage, so I'm sorry about this. It's a very, very small amount. Now, obviously, I'm going to order this part. Focus. I'm going to order this part if I haven't already got one on its way. I can't remember what's in the post and what isn't, and see if that makes a difference. But in the meantime, I've got a couple of very small shims. I think they're from one of the Oxy parts bags. There's no doubt there's possibly already something with the M2 screw set or spares bag, but this just happened to be to hand. It's from one of the Oxy 2s, and it's got two such shims in it. I think they're too thin to call washers, so they must be shims. They are very thin, but certainly I can get two. Well, just testing from the edge here anyway. Let's get this somewhat in view. This is just going to end in disaster, I'm sure, but yeah, like so. Really, what I need to do is go and get a bloody feeler gauge out of the garage. I might actually just do that, and a micrometer to do it properly instead of guessing like this. Trying to pick the bloody thing up. But anyway, I already know that, as you can see, two will fit under there. So possibly need three, really. Come to think of it, yeah. Anyway, you can see there's a small gap there. I am going to go and get the feeler gauge and then a micrometer to find something that matches the measured gap. But this is probably just standard tolerances. I don't know, but you can see how nice that drops down. Beautiful. Now when I tighten things up, or if I just pull that up a bit firmer, this is more like how it was to get the main shaft in. In fact, it wasn't as easy as that. It was a bit stiffer than that. You can see it needs a definite push now. With the screws tightened up fully. By the way, don't do what I did. I just pulled the screws out. I did say in a previous video that they were red Loctited in, so I knew that. But just being lazy, I do this all the time. Instead of doing things properly, I just work with what's in front of me, or work without what isn't on hand. So I couldn't be bothered getting the soldering iron with a big tip to heat up these nuts. So I just unscrewed them with the red Loctite on. That's really bad because it can pull out the aluminium threads. I've seen that numerous times on things. I don't know what things, but just on things. And that obviously would have knackered, you know, a 50 quid motor or whatever they cost. So yeah, don't do that. Heat them up with a fat soldering iron tip, and then that'll free up the high strength red Loctite. Okay, so I've tightened those anyway about right, and like that's quite difficult to get down now. Definitely doesn't drop in. I mean, maybe you can judge from the skids the amount of force. Okay, maybe not. There's some force there anyway. Yeah. So maybe that's just standard tolerances, you know. But it's hard to say, you know. These are precision machines, aren't they? Or what? You know, things have to be balanced nicely, perfectly, as much as possible. You know, it's hard to say what really matters and what doesn't. So it seems best to get everything as near perfect as possible. So you can see that's better now, but it's not as good as it was before. It doesn't. I've loosened off the screws. But I am having to push on the top there, but it all seems to come down to just lowering this front a bit. That's still tight now. Getting it right is not that easy, but oh, there we go. So you can see that's just dropping in nicely now, right through to the bottom. You can see it popping through the bottom there. So that's how I'd like the motor to be mounted, and it seems like the closest I'm going to get is shimming down the front. I mean, having said that, when I tighten up the back too, it does get stiffer, but then without any shims at the front, I suppose it is just going to pull up the front as well. I have tried loosening up various bits of the carbon fibre to see if there's any movement, any adjustment I can make, but it doesn't seem to make a difference. So it could be standard tolerances, manufacturing tolerances. Main shaft is good, I know that. I've tried 2 brand new ones and they're identical. Well, it could just be that when the main shaft bent, obviously it slightly took this with it as well. So this may be imperfect. Alright. That's that. I'll probably have to take a break and get on with some other stuff for a bit before I come back to this. Alright, cheers, bye.